Hello fellow photographer, how is it going? I think it's quite funny when they say that you should marry your lenses and date your camera bodies. If that's the case, I have 8 wives and 2 flings on the side. That's a very complicated situation, wouldn't you agree? I agree 100%, that sounds very complicated. Although the idea is good, an octogamic marriage leaves very little time for anything else. And I'm sure you can imagine the drama between Mrs. 27mm and Mrs. 90mm when Mrs. 90mm gets more attention. Then there is another saying that goes something like, if you love them, set them free. So I have to divorce 4 of my lenses because I also have a girlfriend that needs time and attention. It is decision time. Over the past weeks I've made several videos about my lenses to figure out which ones I should keep, because I find myself not using so many of my lenses. I have 8 of them, not 7 as I stated in my previous videos. I completely forgot about the big bulky 150 to 600mm that I use all the time in Africa. Is it worth keeping? We shall find out later in this video. Let's go over the lenses. I have my 10 to 24 f4.0 wide angle zoom lens that I had a grand ambition of using a lot. Didn't do that, no sir. Then there's the 16 to 55 f2.8 lens. It's Fuji's dinosaur, I call it. It's the oldest lens I have. It's due for an upgrade from Fujifilm as well. I never bring that, it just sits there on a shelf, so I'm not sure about that one either. I have a Viltrox 13mm f1.4 filming right here. Love that lens for my studio. I only use it here, but I use it a lot. So that's, should I keep that? I'm not sure yet. We shall find out later in the video. Then I have the 23mm f1.4, use it all the time. The 33mm f1.4, also use that quite often. Then the 27mm Fuji's Pancake, love pancakes, f2.8, quite good, very small. Tough decision. Last but not least, the 90mm f2.0. Bit clunky and bulky this telephoto lens is, but also very good. Common for all these lenses, they are all fantastic piece of glass. Not common for all of them, they fit my needs. No, they don't. So let's get started figuring out which of these lenses I will keep and which of them I will sell. I'm getting rid of 50% of them. 10 to 24 f4.0. The idea was to use this for vlogging. I hardly ever vlog. Then the second idea was to use it in my studio. Don't use it in my studio at all. I used my Viltrox because that's the type of, that's the idea. Great idea, never used it, have to sell this lens. This is a very tough choice. Fuji's dinosaur lens, the 16 to 55 f2.8, absolute premium piece of glass. I don't use it, it sits on my shelf. I'm a prime lens kind of guy, so when I go out on my everyday adventures and do street photography, I use prime lenses. I don't need this lens. There's no use for anybody if this lens sits on a shelf here at home. So I'm going to sell this one as well. And before you say anything, oh, how can you sell? This is Fuji's best lens. Yeah, I know it's a great lens for, like, if I could choose only one lens for the rest of my life, this would probably be it, because it has superior optical quality. It's not that big, but it's still much bigger than my prime lenses that I use all the time. And I prefer to have a smaller setup whenever I go out to do my street photography. That's how I create better and more, I learn more, and there's just so many more bonuses for me to use these other prime lenses. Sell it. Now, for the monster. This one right here. This has given me so much joy. I've loved using this when we were in Africa. I go to Africa every year, and wildlife photography is sort of like a hobby within a hobby. So I do spend a lot of time there to do that. But I've done it so much, and when I go back to Africa next time, I would rather not focus on all these super close front portraits of lions or whatever, and try to document what goes on behind the scenes or travel photography, stuff like that. So this becomes somewhat redundant, and I don't see why I should keep this lens on my shelf for however long, because I don't know when I will be going back to Africa again. Hopefully next summer we shall just see, but then I wouldn't bring that big lens because I would go with my girlfriend, we would go on vacation. It wouldn't be a dedicated photography trip, because when I go on dedicated photography trips to Africa, I just spend so much time by myself, 4 or 5 hours at one spot to maybe find one lion. That's just how it works, and it takes up a lot of time, and I would rather enjoy Africa differently or with a different lens to avoid all that pressure on myself as well. Taking so many good photos with that lens, but it has to go, and I'm sure a lucky buyer on the secondhand market will have find a lot of joy with this lens. It's a fantastic piece of glass as well, 100%. Made a review about that one up here, and you can also see there what I do in Africa. But this, for now, has to go. Now for the Viltrox lens that I'm filming on right here. Not going to talk a lot about that because I'm definitely keeping it. It's a very specialized lens for me. I only use it in my studio, but if I for some reason need to take a wide angle photo or do real estate photos or whatever, I can't really tell what that should be, but I have the Viltrox to do that job. But I use it all the time for filming. I absolutely love that lens. It's great because I have the background separation, as you can see here. The background is kind of blurry, so I separate myself from the background. It's everything I want in a tiny studio like mine type of lens to film these talking head videos. It's f1.4 as well, so it's super fast. Love that lens. Great lens. You'll find the links to all the lenses down in the description, by the way, so you can check them out. And that's already 4 lenses where I'm selling 3 of them. Now for the difficult part. Here's where it gets tricky. Let's start with the 90mm. Really love this lens. This is a great supplement to my street photography. It's not for everyone. It's a 135mm equivalent. I just find it to work so well in my street photography because I capture the full scene with a wider angle, for example, the 23mm. Then I wait and get the detail shots or a lovely, blurry, nice background of random subjects on the street. It's a super lens and I'm very fond of this one. This is also a few years old now, so I think if you want this lens, you can get it on a good deal on the second-hand market. So this is a keeper. This and the Viltrox, I'll keep them. And now for the trickiest part. It stands between the 27mm pancake lens, 33mm f1.4 and the 23mm f1.4. These are much bigger, as you can see here. The 23mm and the 33mm, they're about the same size. This is much smaller. And I got this one in Tokyo, since I couldn't get my hands on the Fujifilm X106. That was a bummer, so I made basically my X-T5 into a Fujifilm X106. With this lens, and it worked. And I've used it a lot since. I was quite sure that would be the keeper because it's a pancake lens, it almost fits in my pocket. But then I realized as I got back home from our year of travel, when I go out doing street photography, which is something I do quite a lot, I will almost always bring a dedicated lens for it. And I really don't mind bringing extra, like a bit extra bulkiness to my kit, like this would be, definitely compared to the 27mm. And I really like the 23mm or 33mm as well. So if you can get the best quality glass and you know you're going to use it a lot, I would say those 2 are the keepers. Those 2 are the ones you will keep. This one, I really don't see the point since, like I mentioned, I go out on dedicated photo sessions where I bring dedicated glass for that. I want the absolute best for it, and they're still not as conspicuous as full frame cameras out there, so it's a fairly light and small setup, which is why I will sell this one that I got in Tokyo. It's a bit sad because I really wanted that lens, but still, we have to think, do we really need it? Is it something that benefits us? And if it's not, then why should you keep it? Why should you have that in your arsenal when you are not using it? I think having too much gear is an obstacle to creativity, or it can be if you're a certain type of person, and I'm that certain type of person. So something to think about for yourself as well. If you're debating getting this lens or that lens, what's the reason? Why would you get it? So that's the conclusion. I'm selling these 4 lenses that I mentioned, and I seriously doubt I will miss any of them. Once they're out of the house, they're out of the house, they're out of my life, and I will work with what I have, and probably, most likely, I will be able to create more and better content for myself with what I already have. And I think I've mentioned this before, but I'm more like a prime lens kind of guy. So bringing out this one compared to the 16 to 55, for example, brings me more joy. I like using a prime lens more than I like using a zoom lens. But if you're a beginner starting with a zoom lens, that's probably a good idea until you know what focal ranges that you like to use for yourself. So with the money that I will make from selling these lenses, I will probably spend on a photography trip somewhere. I don't know when, I don't know where, but it will certainly give me enough to have a decent photo trip somewhere. And that's also something that's much more important than the best gear in the world. If you can use the gear you have and rather spend those $1,000 on a photography trip, I think you'll have much more joy from that than getting whatever lens that you had in mind, or whatever gear you had in mind, to trick yourself into making you a better creator. Going on trips, traveling will almost always enhance your photography much more than any new gear will. And with that is the end of the video. See you in the next one. Bye bye.